guess it takes work. You actually have to, for me, you have to actively do something about your feelings. So for me, it was talking to a counsellor. That was my first step. But that's not everybody's way of acting. It was also getting outside, finding things that actually did feel okay again. So finding things like exercise, just putting one foot after the other to begin with, finding things that were that made you feel okay, and a lot of that for me would be going for a walk, but then treating yourself to something. So for me, it's like, well, there's no point in going for a walk unless I'm having a cup of coffee. So there was that sort of thing. So, and also that allowance to feel a bit of happiness about something. So so in the very early days, it was people coming to go for a walk with me. One of my sisters did it every morning for about 4 weeks. So she took time off work and she would walk, and we would have coffee, and it got me out of bed, and it got me putting clothes on, and it got me getting out the door one foot after the other. So that was very early days. And then, I think I learned a lot of little tricks and a lot of little things that made me feel okay. One of my biggest things is lighting a candle. So if I would be driving home, and I'd be coming home to an empty house. So I would go in and I would straight away light the candle in the kitchen, and I'd have a moment where I would say something to Luke, and then I'd go on and I could get dinner and things like that. So, and I would just look at that candle, and that was a symbol of hope. And I would do things like that. I would always leave lights. These are funny little things that I would do. I would always leave a light on in the house, because in the winter, when I got home from school, it would be dark. So I had to go into a light. So I know it was a waste of energy and a waste of power, but I had to sort of balance that out with my well-being. So I would need the light on. I also left the radio on, so that when I walked into the house, there was music playing or a voice. So I never walked into a cold, empty, dark house, and I still don't like doing that. So I would walk in, and I would also leave the heating down really low, so that at least the house wasn't freezing cold. So things like that, I had to do things to nurture my body as well as my mind. So I would have, a bit of heating, a bit of light, and a bit of sound. And as I said, and then I would often light a candle, and then I was okay. So they were my little daily rituals. And then, gradually you become okay without doing all those things. And then when you go into a dark space again, you think, well, what did I do last time? And you go back to those things, and you employ those strategies again. I also did other things like yoga, and that was wonderful for me. And I would go back to some individual counselling on a fairly regular basis whenever I felt I needed to. And I would do that. I did that for, probably 4 or 5 years. I attended group in support after suicide. I found group discussions and things like that. I found that really helpful and useful for me. So it's a lot of it is working out what is good for you, what gives you little glimmers of hope, what gives you little feelings of well-being, and then using those. So that would be different for different people, but it's important to know what they are and employ them when you need them, and also to realise that every time you go into that dark space, just think, somehow you've got to keep in mind that you will get out of it again. and it's hard to know how long. And then sometimes when you look back, you think, oh, that's right. I didn't feel that. I felt, terrible a month ago, but here I am now, not feeling that terrible. Things like holidays too are interesting. To go away is interesting because when you go away, it might be okay and it might be great. But the coming home is, problematic. Once again, it's walking. I mean, you can't leave your heating and your lighting on for 2 weeks while you're away. So once again, you're going to first of all, you're going to have to come into a cold, dark, empty house and start again with that. And it's also coming back to all your normal routine again, and that is quite challenging and confronting, particularly in the early years. In the first 3, 4, 5 years. There's no time limit on grief either, and it constantly changes. But I think it's a bit like a roller coaster, but perhaps the dips get a bit less. So instead of going down as far as you might have gone down last time, I think if you actually stop and think about it, you probably haven't gone down quite that far. So I think the dips gradually get shallower and shallower.